So welcome everybody to this term's last Virtual Ethical Innovation Lecture, or VAIL as we usually call it in short. I'm very happy that Larissa Bolte is with us today. I'm going to introduce her very briefly in just a minute. Typically at that point, let me just thank you again that you found the time in your schedules to fit this lecture in here. I've seen people from different places, also people familiar with ethics of technology. Usually we plan to have this as a kind of format that is also addressing a wider audience, and also people that are in technology don't have the time maybe to read entire papers, but that also is kind of that are very interested in the topic and that want to have a bite-sized introduction into those topics. And I think today's presentation is going to be a nice fit to our schedule. So again, I'm very happy that you agreed to do a presentation here. I also have to thank the Academy of Sciences, of Humanities and Sciences, that way around in Hamburg, for continuing support, financial support. And with this, we were able to make this lecture series happen. We are the Ethical Innovation Hub. This is a research group that is a joint venture of both the Institute for the History of Medicine and Science Studies at the University of Lübeck and the Institute for Electrical Engineering and Medicine. Also a bridge between humanities and technology. And what we do is we do research on how ethical considerations can actually be directly integrated into technological and research developments. And that is what we try to bring forward, an integrated way of ethics in technology development. But of course, that cannot be done without having any pure or any fundamental ethical perspective. So again, this will be a topic of today's talk, which I welcome Larissa Bolte, who is a research assistant at the Sustainable AI Lab at the Institute of Science and Ethics at the University of Bonn, which is not the university, but the institute is headed by Amy van Weinsberg, as you may know. And we've had some interesting past avails as well. You can look them up when we found the time to actually bring them online, the recordings, that is, and our highlights. And that will also be the case for today, for your talk, Larissa. So we'll record the presentation, and afterwards we'll have a question and answer session that where I will also allow you to use your microphone. That will not be recorded, but we maybe will write some of the questions that have been answered and asked also in our highlights. So we'll have the presentation first in full, and now without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Larissa with her presentation on ethics of carefulness, and as a way from an ethics of the desirability towards an ethics of carefulness as a way of going beyond current ethics approaches to sustainable AI. Please, looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much. Let me just share my screen real quick. All right, I hope this is in full screen mode now.
Yes, it is.
Good, perfect. All right. So again, thank you very much, Christian, and also the Ethical Innovation Hub for having me, for giving me the opportunity to speak about this paper that I've written together with two of my colleagues, also my supervisor. So that's me, then Amy van Weinsberg, and also Thijs van de Meulenbrücke. And we wrote this paper called From an Ethics of Carefulness to an Ethics of Desirability, going beyond current ethics approaches to sustainable AI. And today I'm trying to just give you the main tenets of that paper, the general gist of it, but also I want to give a quick overview of AI ethics and the AI ethics space in general, so you know what's going on. First of all, though, a little bit about us. So we are the Institute for Science and Ethics, Institut für Wissenschaft und Ethik at the University of Bonn. This is our beautiful building that I'm sitting in right now. And also at the Institute for Science and Ethics, we have this research group called the Sustainable AI Lab. The lab was founded in 2020 by Amy Van Weinsberg. She's now the Humboldt Professor for the Applied Ethics of Artificial Intelligence at the University of Bonn. And we look at the intersection between AI, sustainability in the context of AI ethics. We have researchers working on healthcare, for example. We have people looking into the life cycle assessment of AI. We have people like me working more on the conceptual part. I'm a philosopher, so I work on the conceptual foundations of sustainability. And just, we have environmental ethics too. So all of these things, we look into tech ethics and sustainability and AI. That's just about us. Also, we have a conference coming up, quick ad, Sustainable AI Conference 2023. You're all welcome to register on our website. All right, but now really getting into the content. So in the next 20 to 30 minutes, I'll try to keep it to 20. I'll talk about, first of all, what is ethics? I've been told that some people in the audience might not be familiar with ethics as a philosophical discipline. Then I want to talk about AI ethics, some of the issues that have come up or that have been discussed, giving you an overview, but also what is happening in the space of AI ethics guideline documents, which is what I want to focus on today. And then finally, I want to talk about why sustainable AI, why the research that we are doing, and that this is also where I give you some of the main tenets of the paper that I want to discuss today. So quite a schedule. I hope it's not going to be too much in one talk, but we'll get through it. All right, so what is ethics to begin with? To give you a very general definition of ethics, ethics is about right human action, or what is good for humans, the good human life. We as humans are in the perhaps unique predicament of having to give reasons for our behavior. And on the flip side, it also means that we have to answer to our peers if we did them wrong by, for example, hurting them or undermining their autonomy or not letting them be able to fulfill their needs. All of these are concerns, and we have to answer to people what our reasons are for this kind of behavior. And ethics then is the study, or is giving us guidance, studies how we can answer to these questions, what good reasons for behavior are, and what we want our lives to look like. So ethical principles really are this compass in our life, telling us what to do and where we should be headed. Now, all of this very general definition could apply to something like a personal ethics as well. So something like a personal code of conduct, of course. But when I talk about ethics, I'm not talking about this kind of personal ethics. Rather, I'm talking about ethics as a philosophical discipline. So what is philosophical ethics? How does philosophical ethics work? Well, the general idea of philosophical ethics is that you give a clear idea of what your ethical principles are, what your theory of the good human life looks like, and then you try to defend that against other accounts with sound argumentation. So to illustrate, I brought a little example, very, very oversimplified, of a historical debate. Really, really oversimplified, but just so you get the gist, the idea of how this would work. So let's say you have this debate between John Stuart Mill and Immanuel Kant. So on the one hand, first, Mill says, one should always pursue the action that results in the greatest amount of happiness for the greatest number of people. And this is the ethical principle that he posits. Now, on the face of it, of course, that sounds very reasonable, it sounds very good, but these are philosophers. So, of course, Kant has an objection, and Kant says, no, this cannot be right, because if we listen to this principle, that would mean we're always being determined by some circumstance, by our desires, by our whims, and this is not what ethics is about. Just take it to the extreme. If you listen to this principle, that could mean that if many people desire it, we could just kill people based on that principle. There's nothing in theory that could prevent that. So instead, because there's these problems, we should be guided by universal rational principles that help us achieve true autonomy. Now, I don't really want to get into the intricacies of this debate. Rather, I want you to notice how this works. So you have one ethical principle, and then you have someone coming from a different perspective, having a different idea of what ethics is, giving an objection, and then from there building their counter-argument, giving their reasons why they think the first principle is not quite adequate. And this is exactly what I'm trying to attempt, or what I'm attempting in this talk today. I want to give you an analysis of what kind of ethics is at play currently in AI ethics, specifically in AI ethics guideline documents. And from there, then I want to launch a critique of that, an objection from a different perspective. And in my case, that would be the sustainability perspective. So this is what you'll have to expect in this talk. All right, from what is ethics, let's go to AI ethics. So if ethics is all about right human action and also about the good human life, whatever that means, then AI ethics is about how we should behave in the face of AI technologies, and also how AI technologies influence how we live a good human life. I brought you a couple of examples of issues that could be called AI ethics issues. There's a vast number of issues that have been addressed. This is a really, really small sample size. So one concern could be recommender systems and echo chambers, where you get sucked into a specific corner of the internet, or where you get manipulated to do certain things, to buy things, for example. This is represented by this little blue picture up here. On the lower left corner, a different issue with labeling and categorizing people, and also how we as society view certain groups of people, and how the AI then reproduces that bias, that stereotype. So on the lower left, this is actually an image that I created myself. I think it was sometime last week. I used a stable diffusion AI algorithm openly available on the web, and I prompted it with Asian girls. And then I got these very over-sexualized pictures. But it could also work the other way around. You put in a picture and you get a racist label, for example, which happened here with this news headline on the lower right, Facebook apologizing after someone uploading a video of black men, and then the AI put the primates label on it, obviously very racist. And then finally, something that many of you might remember, the Cambridge Analytica scandal, also an AI ethics issue where big data was used and AI technology was used to analyze that data to then to influence elections. So how can AI influence democratic processes would also be an AI ethics issue. All of these are things that we need to consider. Now, there's the academic debate on AI ethics, but then there's also the debate that is happening in the public sphere. And many public and also private actors move into the space of AI ethics. And they usually do that by publishing their own principles, their own ethical AI guidelines, their own AI ethics guideline principles. This is just a collection of a few. You have, for example, the EU recently put out an AI ethics document with the high-level expert group on artificial intelligence. You have Amnesty International with the Toronto Declaration. You have Microsoft, a private company, and many more. And it's these kinds of documents, these kinds of attempts at AI ethics that happen in the public sphere, also in the private sphere, that I want to address and that I want to analyze a little bit. If you want to get a good overview on how many of these are out there, there's this inventory that is put together by Algorithm Watch, a German research and advocacy institution. They currently list, I think it's 167 of these guidelines. So there's quite a few out there, and they give you a little overview of them as well. It's really helpful. All right, so what are these AI ethics guideline documents like? What kinds of ethics do they propose? How do they work? I brought you here an example of the Rome call for AI ethics, but this is very interchangeable. Quite curiously, even though there's so many out there, many of them converge on the same approach and also on the very same principles. So usually what an AI ethics guideline document would do is it would propose a set of principles, it would define them, and it would then ask you to apply these principles to a specific AI algorithm that you're researching, developing, using, what have you. So in this Rome call for AI ethics, for example, the principles were transparency, inclusion, accountability, impartiality, reliability, and security and privacy. Very typical sets of principles. All of them differ a little bit, but this is what you would have to expect. Now, if you now are someone who wants to apply these principles, you would consult these documents. You would try to interpret these principles. They are very high level most of the time. You can see here there's very, very short definitions. Of course, in the documents, there's also longer definitions, but they remain very high level. And then you would try to align your particular case with the principles that are given in these documents. And this is then the idea of how AI ethics is supposed to work. Now, of course, I wouldn't be giving this talk if there weren't any problems with this. And there are about, in the paper at least, that me and my colleagues wrote, we identified 3 problems that are spoken about in the literature. I will rush through them a little bit, and I will draw your attention to the hidden costs problem, because I will talk about this one in more detail later on in the talk. But first of all, an overview. So the one problem with these AI ethics guideline documents could be or is that ethics is then often perceived by developers, by researchers, by the people trying to apply it as a hindrance. Because you have this project and you want to, for example, develop this AI algorithm, and then suddenly you have this add-on of ethics, and now you also have to consider all these ethical constraints, and it becomes a problem of fixing or tweaking your algorithm a little bit to comply with it. And then on the other hand, there's also the problem of the need for interpretation that I've already alluded to a little bit. So these principles are very high level. So anyone who wants to use them for their particular application case needs to first figure out what they mean in their specific context. And then finally, and again, this is the problem that I want to point you to, the hidden costs problem. Because these documents look at this particular algorithm, they often overlook other broader issues in the supply chain, for example, of AI. These are social and ecological issues, sustainability issues, and I will talk about what these are just in a second. Okay. So we have all these problems, but there's also a common cause that has been identified in the AI ethics literature that all seems to cause these very problems. And here I'm referring to specifically to an overview, a review of AI ethics guideline documents that has been done by Thilo Hagendorf. I have the reference to that in my resources in the very end. So Hagendorf argues that the problem with AI ethics guideline documents lies precisely in the fact that they perceive of AI as a technology as isolated artifacts. So instead of looking at AI in its broader context, how it's employed in societies, how there's an AI infrastructure that makes AI possible, instead, these guideline documents prefer to speak about singular AI algorithms, this particular one, and now you have to figure out how we can make this one and that one more ethical, and that seems to be the problem. Now, my colleagues and I then argued that this view of AI as a technology, seeing AI as this one algorithm, that algorithm, goes hand in hand with a certain approach to ethics, which we have dubbed an ethics of carefulness. Let me just very briefly give you the definition. So we said an ethics of carefulness is characterized by a motivation to render technology design, development, and use careful and safe. So what that means is it works from what we call the technological paradigm, the idea that there's something deterministic about the technology. Well, there's certain problems that the technology is supposed to solve, and then we're just trying to make technology better. And also that technology just has to proceed in a certain way, that the infrastructure around technology just works in a certain way. And these are all presumed givens. And all we can really change is the particular artifact that we're working on right now. So that also then means that we have to basically view things as isolated, because that's the only place where we can really do ethics, where we can really intervene in order to make things a little better. So an ethics of carefulness in the end then is an ethics of individuals. So it's an ethics of making individual AI algorithms, for example, just better. It's also about individual solutions to individual problems. And it's about individual experts, individual innovators to perform these technical fixes that are necessary to make things more ethical. And that is the view that is proposed by this ethics of carefulness, and this is the role of ethics in this view, and this is also how it relates to the idea of AI as isolated artifacts. Now, of course, because we find this view in AI ethics guideline documents, we find this view of isolated artifacts in AI ethics guideline documents, we argue that they adhere to this ethics of carefulness approach of making things safe, but not really looking at the broader picture. And this is exactly then where sustainability comes in and where our research at the lab comes in. We argue in the paper that I'm presenting right now that this ethics of carefulness is not really fit to address sustainability concerns that come up in the context of AI. So what are these concerns? Well, sustainability is a very, very fuzzy concept. And actually, my entire PhD project is about figuring out what we actually mean by sustainability and what kinds of concerns sustainability places on us. But for the sake of this talk, I want to give a working definition, and I'll just rely on the UN definition that was put forth in the Brundtland report, the so-called Brundtland report, where it says that sustainability, or rather sustainable development, is about meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So this is clearly a normative goal, right? It's about human needs, what humans are entitled to, what we should provide humans. It's also about justice for current and future people, intergenerational justice. And then this definition is often put into the context of the so-called 3 pillars of sustainability. So we have the environment, we have society, and we have economic systems that all work together, that all form a grand whole that needs to be coordinated in order to arrive at this normative goal of meeting the current and future human needs. That very roughly is the idea of sustainability. Now, why should we care about sustainability in the context of AI? Well, if you take the sustainability perspective, you will see that there are many sustainability concerns that are associated with AI, and especially with the very materiality of AI. We often like to think of AI as something that is very ephemeral, or that is in the cloud, that's just software. But of course, in order to have the software, we also need material hardware to run the software. And there's an entire infrastructure of things that make AI possible in the first place. And I just picked out a couple of issues. Some of them you might have heard of, some of them you might never have heard of. But I'm just going to walk you through this entire line of production, maintenance, and then obsolescence of AI and the issues that may come up. So at the very bottom here on the left-hand side, you see a lithium mine. This is one in France, but there's many all over the world. And of course, you need lithium for all these computer parts, right? And not only lithium, also many other rare minerals, but I'll be focusing on this here. Because lithium mining is known to use lots of water. The way it's done is it's basically lithium is pressure washed out of the earth. In South America and South American lithium mines, this has already led to the deterioration of bogs around the lithium sites, so entire ecosystems have been drained. And of course, mining in general is always a strain on the environment, and this is what it could look like. Then further up on the chain, the development chain of AI, you have all these click workers that perform very alienated work under mostly unlivable wages. Some of you may have heard of the Amazon Mechanical Turk. If you haven't, feel free to look it up. It's quite interesting. Also, please ask me in the Q&A why this name is very ironic. And then so these click workers perform the data labeling for AI, so all the data that is needed to feed the AI to make the AI algorithm possible. This is all human labor that needs to be performed. Then, of course, the algorithm needs to be trained, tuned, and run. This all happens in big data centers that use lots and lots of energy to be maintained. And then finally, once we're done with the hardware, we come to the obsolescence side. We have problems with electronic waste, these toxic garbage dumps that are then created in other parts of the world. And we also have problems with recycling. Many parts of the electronic hardware that is needed are not recyclable, but some of them are, and these parts tend to be quite expensive. So here I brought a picture from Ghana, where people burn electronic waste in order to get to the precious minerals inside. But of course, this also this also sets free all these toxic fumes and all this drainage that goes into the soil. So it's a big health risk for these workers here and also for their communities. So these are all issues related to sustainability in the context of AI. Now, what my colleagues and I argue in the paper is that all these concerns are very valid, but they're often hidden, and they are hidden because we look at AI and AI ethics from an ethics of carefulness perspective, where we only ever look at individual algorithms and then try to do something about them to make them a little better. But this doesn't really address sustainability problems. It cannot address sustainability problems because sustainability problems always happen at a higher level of analysis. So you have to look at global supply chains, you have to look at socio-political systems, you have to zoom out from the individual to see the bigger picture, to see what's going on. And this just cannot be done if we focus on singular AI algorithms, how we can make them a little better, a little more safe, how we can be a little bit more careful about them. So what we instead propose is an ethics of desirability. So we argue because an ethics of carefulness is unfit to address these concerns, and also because we need to address these concerns, we need a different approach to ethics. We need to think about ethics in the context of AI in a very different way. So we propose this ethics of desirability, meaning we need to scrutinize the technological paradigm, meaning we have to think about where we want AI research and technology to go on the grand scheme of things. We have to reassess what kinds of problems we want to solve with AI and what kinds of problems are so pressing that it justifies all these sustainability concerns, and which problems might not be so pressing, and maybe we want to do something else about them or not do anything about them at all. And we want to urge people to see technological development never really as a process with a predetermined end, where we can just intervene at very small instances throughout, but rather we want to see technological development as a socio-political choice. So you have all these different, the broader AI infrastructure, you have the broader social workings of AI research and development and economy, and there are many different paths that this could take. And an ethics of desirability is then about assessing all these different pathways and picking out which ones of these are desirable and which ones we rather would not like to go down. So in this view, then, ethics is about holistically assessing the state of a social order. And AI ethics is about the role that AI technologies can play in this bigger picture. And that's precisely the idea. So what does this have to do with sustainability, and how do sustainability and an ethics of desirability connect? Well, we just think that they, again, go hand in hand, just as did this view of isolated artifacts in an ethics of carefulness. So, of course, if you think of ethics in terms of an ethics of desirability, you look at these different paths, but then you still have to determine what the right path is, right? And we think that sustainability can act as this pathfinder. Sustainability gives us an answer to what is the state of the system, that is the environmental, the social, and the economic system that we want to achieve. And then an ethics of desirability brings in this perspective of looking at technology in this system and how the technology interacts with the system. So we look at how AI interacts with the social, the environmental, and the economic systems. And this as a whole then gives us the ethics of desirability with a sustainability goal. And this then is basically the main thesis of the paper, that there's lots to be gained from looking closer at the sustainability notion and getting clearer on what we mean by a sustainable state of the system. And if we know that, we can better do AI ethics as a whole and better address these sustainability concerns, but also other social concerns that come up. All right, so that is the end of my talk. I hope I could give you a very broad overview of what's happening in the AI ethics space, specifically the AI ethics guideline space, and also why sustainability and AI is important, like looking at the interconnection between these two. And now I'm very, very happy to take your questions and take your feedback, and thank you very much for listening.